What actually happens inside your body when you drink apple cider vinegar on an empty stomach? This isn't a viral weight loss hack question. It's a biology question. In today's video, what happens when you drink apple cider vinegar on an empty stomach? Science explained. We're not talking about miracles or instant fat-burning claims. Instead, we'll walk through the physiological sequence step by step from the moment acetic acid touches your tongue to its effects on stomach acid regulation, blood sugar control, liver metabolism, hunger hormones, and the gut microbiome. Apple cider vinegar may be a useful metabolic tool, but it is not a replacement for a healthy diet. It is not a magical detox solution, and its effects depend entirely on your biological context. The real question isn't, is apple cider vinegar good? It's under what conditions, at what dose, and through which mechanisms does it actually make sense? If you want to understand your body at the cellular level, not through hype, but through biochemistry, stay with me until the end. At Health Systems Explained, we don't chase trends. We decode biology. Subscribe and turn on notifications if you want to understand your metabolism a little deeper every week. The first 0.5 minutes, awakening the digestive system. Within seconds of apple cider vinegar touching your tongue. What happens first is not fat burning. It's neurology. The sharp, sour taste activates specialized taste receptors, sending immediate electrical signals through cranial nerves to the brainstem. This is part of the cephalic phase response, the mechanism by which the body prepares for digestion before food even reaches the stomach. In other words, taste alone can wake up the digestive system. This reflex increases saliva production, not only to buffer acidity and protect tooth enamel and the esophagus, but also to initiate digestive enzymes such as amylase. Although vinegar itself contains minimal carbohydrates, the activation of enzymes demonstrates the anticipatory coordination between taste and digestion. The body predicts incoming food rather than reacting passively. When diluted vinegar reaches the empty stomach after an overnight fast, the gastric environment is relatively inactive. Basal acid secretion continues, but enzyme flow and muscular activity are lower than during a meal. The arrival of acetic acid provides a clear chemical stimulus. Interestingly, adding acid externally does not simply increase acidity, but may influence intrinsic pH regulation mechanisms. The stomach lining contains pH sensors and feedback systems involving gastrin, the hormone that stimulates acid secretion. In individuals with low stomach acid hypochlorhydria, mild external acid may temporarily enhance the optimal acidic environment required for pepsin activation, the enzyme responsible for protein breakdown. This may help those who experience bloating or sluggish digestion after protein-rich meals. However, this does not mean apple cider vinegar cures low stomach acid. Acid production depends on many variables, including age, stress, H. pylori infection, proton pump inhibitor use, and inflammation. Vinegar may act as a mild stimulus, but it does not replace medical treatment when necessary. Simultaneously, acid-related signals from the stomach travel back to the brain through neuroendocrine pathways, reinforcing a ready-to-eat state. Even before breakfast, the body shifts into preparation mode. Enzyme secretion increases. Gastric motility subtly activates, and the chemical environment optimizes for incoming food. This is what the original video describes as acid awakening, but biologically, it is cephalic phase activation. Some individuals report feeling lighter or more alert after drinking diluted vinegar. This subjective sensation may relate to mild sympathetic activation and digestive reflexes rather than immediate fat burning. The body transitions from a resting state to a metabolically alert one, and sour taste serves as a clear biological signal. Safety remains critical. Acetic acid is corrosive in concentrated form. Always dilute 1-2 tablespoons in a full glass of water. Avoid prolonged contact with teeth. and rinse afterward. Individuals with GERD, ulcers, or esophageal sensitivity should consult a healthcare professional. In summary, during the first 0.5 minutes, what unfolds is not metabolic magic, but a refined neurochemical cascade. Sour taste activates the cephalic phase of digestion. Acetic acid may support gastric acidity in some individuals. Digestive enzymes are primed before the first bite of food. This is not hype, it is physiology. And that is how a simple morning ritual interacts with your digestive system at the level of biological reflex. 5-15 minutes, blood sugar stabilization, and a metabolic head start after the digestive system has been activated. The 5-15-minute window is when metabolic effects begin to emerge more clearly. This is when acetic acid, the primary active component of apple cider vinegar, starts interacting with pathways related to carbohydrate metabolism and insulin. Research suggests that acetic acid may mildly inhibit carbohydrate digesting enzymes such as alpha amylase and alpha glucosidase. These enzymes break down complex carbohydrates into glucose for absorption. When their activity is slightly reduced, carbohydrate digestion slows. This does not prevent glucose absorption, it moderates its rate. In metabolism, speed matters. The rate at which blood glucose rises determines the magnitude of the insulin response. A rapid glucose spike triggers a strong insulin surge. A slower rise results in a more moderate insulin response, reducing the likelihood of sharp post-meal crashes. Some small human studies have shown that consuming vinegar before a carbohydrate-rich meal can improve short-term insulin sensitivity. The often cited 34% improvement comes from limited studies in specific populations, such as individuals with insulin resistance or prediabetes. It is not a universal effect and does not replace medical management for metabolic disease. Mechanistically, acetate, the metabolized form of acetic acid, may influence AMPK pathways and improve cellular glucose uptake efficiency in muscle and liver. When cells are more insulin sensitive, glucose enters with lower insulin requirements. Therefore, drinking diluted vinegar before breakfast, especially before a carbohydrate-containing meal, may result in slower glucose elevation and a lower insulin spike compared to not consuming it. This is the idea of giving metabolism a head start. You are not eliminating the meal's carbohydrate load, but you are adjusting the biochemical context before absorption begins. However, context is critical. If breakfast remains high in refined carbohydrates and sugars, vinegar's effect will be limited. When combined with protein, healthy fats, and fiber, glycemic control may improve more noticeably. Individual biology also matters. Those with insulin resistance may observe stronger effects compared to metabolically healthy individuals. Timing plays a role as well. Consuming vinegar in a fasted state allows acetate to circulate before carbohydrate intake begins. Apple cider vinegar is not a shield against poor dietary patterns. It does not negate the impact of excessive sugar consumption. It is a small modulatory tool within a much larger system overall diet. Physical activity, sleep, and stress management. In summary, within 5-15 minutes, acetic acid may slow carbohydrate digestion, modestly improve insulin sensitivity, and promote a smoother blood glucose response at breakfast. It is not magic. It is a matter of metabolic pacing and in physiology. Timing often matters as much as quantity. 15-30 minutes, the liver, acetate, and the role of AMPK. Between 15 and 30 minutes after drinking diluted apple cider vinegar, most acetic acid has been absorbed through the stomach and small intestine and transported via the portal circulation directly to the liver. There, acetic acid is converted into acetate, a small molecule that participates in multiple metabolic pathways. Acetate is then converted into acetyl-CoA, a central metabolic hub. Acetyl-CoA can enter the Krebs cycle to produce ATP energy. or it can participate in fatty acid synthesis, depending on the body's energy state. This distinction is critical. Acetate does not automatically equal fat burning. Its metabolic fate depends on hormonal and energetic context. The video highlights AMPK, AMP-activated protein kinase, often described as a metabolic master switch. AMPK is activated when cells sense low energy and increased AMP-ATP ratio. Once activated, AMPK promotes energy-generating processes such as fatty acid oxidation and suppresses energy-consuming processes like lipid synthesis. Some animal and cellular studies suggest acetate may influence AMPK pathways. This forms the basis for the claim that apple cider vinegar can shift the body from storage mode to fat-burning mode. However, it is important to distinguish between laboratory findings and real-world human physiology. In humans, the effect appears modest and context-dependent. If you are in a fasted or low insulin state, your body is already primed to use fat as fuel. In that environment, acetate may provide mild support for lipid oxidation. But if you have just consumed a carbohydrate-rich meal and insulin is elevated, glucose will remain the preferred fuel source. Thus, the idea of a fat-burning switch should be interpreted carefully. There is no magical on-off button that instantly maximizes fat burning. Instead, small biological signals may influence metabolic direction. Acetate and AMPK may be part of that signaling network. Some emerging research also explores acetate's influence on appetite regulation and gut-liver signaling pathways. Though human evidence remains preliminary, ultimately, fat oxidation depends on energy balance, insulin levels, physical activity, sleep quality, and stress management. Apple cider vinegar may play a small supportive role, but does not override foundational metabolic principles. If consumed in a fasted state and paired with light activity, the metabolic environment, low insulin, and exercise-induced AMPK activation may favor fat utilization. In this context, vinegar is not the primary driver, but a contributing factor within a broader metabolic system. In summary, during the 15-30-minute window, acetic acid is converted to acetate in the liver and may interact with AMPK pathways. This can support fat utilization under appropriate conditions. However, the fat-burning switch is not a single mechanism. It is the result of coordinated biological signals, 30-60 minutes, hunger hormones, and appetite regulation. Between 30 and 60 minutes after drinking diluted apple cider vinegar on an empty stomach, one of the most discussed effects is its influence on appetite. This is when the digestive system, liver, and gut-brain axis begin interacting more closely through hormonal signaling. Hunger is not simply the result of an empty stomach. It is regulated by a complex hormonal network. Ghrelin is often called the hunger hormone because its levels rise before meals and stimulate appetite. In contrast, hormones such as peptide YYPYY, glamina, and cholecystokinin signal fullness and slow gastric emptying. Some small studies suggest that consuming vinegar before a meal may modestly reduce ghrelin and increase PYY in the short term. A possible mechanism involves delayed gastric emptying and improved post-meal glucose stability. When blood sugar rises more gradually and insulin remains steadier, the subsequent rebound hunger may be reduced. Additionally, acetic acid may stimulate nutrient-sensing receptors in the small intestine. The gut functions as a major endocrine organ. When these receptors are activated, signals travel to the brain via the vagus nerve, influencing appetite centers in the hypothalamus. This may explain why some individuals report reduced hunger after drinking vinegar before meals, and why some short-term studies show slightly reduced calorie intake in subsequent meals. However, the effect size is generally modest and varies between individuals. Delayed gastric emptying is another factor. Vinegar may slow this process in some individuals. prolonging fullness. However, in those with motility disorders such as gastroparesis, further slowing may cause discomfort. It is also important to acknowledge behavioral influences. A structured morning ritual may indirectly influence food choices throughout the day, not solely through hormonal changes, but through increased mindfulness. Long-term weight loss studies involving vinegar show modest effects. In 8 12-week trials, daily vinegar consumption was associated with slightly greater weight loss compared to control groups, even when calorie intake was similar. This suggests appetite and insulin modulation may play a role, but not a transformative one. Thus, the idea that vinegar turns off hunger is oversimplified. A more accurate interpretation is that it may subtly adjust hunger-related hormonal signals, especially when combined with a balanced diet. In summary, during the 30-60-minute window, apple cider vinegar may influence ghrelin and peptide YY, slow gastric emptying, and modestly stabilize appetite. These are subtle regulatory adjustments within a complex appetite control system, not a magic solution for weight management. 1-4 hours gut microbiome, acetate, and energy metabolism. Between 1 and 4 hours after drinking diluted apple cider vinegar, the effects extend beyond the stomach and liver, involving the gut microbiome and energy metabolism. At this stage, it is crucial to distinguish between plausible biological mechanisms and clinically significant effects in humans. Raw. Unfiltered apple cider vinegar containing the mother includes acetic acid bacteria and fermentation byproducts. While it is not a potent probiotic like yogurt or kefir, it may provide bioactive compounds. However, the acidic environment of the stomach makes large-scale bacterial colonization unlikely. Therefore, the primary impact likely comes from its chemical environment rather than direct probiotic implantation. Acetic acid and acetate that reach the colon may serve as substrates for certain beneficial gut bacteria. In fact, acetate is one of the 3 main short-chain fatty acids, SCFAs, produced during fiber fermentation. SCFAs support gut barrier integrity, immune regulation, and energy metabolism. Some research suggests acetate may enhance tight junction integrity between intestinal cells, potentially reducing intestinal permeability. However, much of this evidence comes from animal or laboratory models, and its magnitude in healthy humans remains under investigation. Subjectively, some individuals report reduced bloating or improved digestion after consistent morning vinegar use. This may relate to gastric regulation or subtle microbiome shifts, though responses are highly individualized. During the 1-4 hour window, the body also enters a post-absorptive metabolic state. If still fasted, insulin remains low and liver glycogen gradually declines, favoring fatty acid oxidation. Some animal studies suggest acetic acid may increase expression of lipid metabolism genes. In humans, the effect appears modest and context-dependent. Effects may be amplified when combined with fasting or physical activity. Exercise activates AMPK and increases energy demand. In a low insulin environment, acetate presence may slightly support fat utilization. Still, vinegar is a supportive factor, not the primary driver. It is important not to overstate its role. Fat loss requires sustained energy balance, diet quality, muscle mass, and activity. Apple cider vinegar may influence small signaling pathways, but it does not override metabolic fundamentals. In summary, within 1-4 hours, apple cider vinegar may interact with the gut environment and modestly influence energy metabolism, especially when paired with fasting or exercise. These are subtle biological adjustments, not a metabolic shortcut. When looking at long-term use several weeks to months, the important question is no longer what happens in the first 30 minutes, but but whether small physiological changes accumulate into meaningful results. Some 8-12-week studies suggest daily vinegar consumption, typically 1-2 tablespoons, may modestly improve insulin sensitivity. Particularly in individuals with insulin resistance or overweight, proposed mechanisms include reduced post-meal glucose spikes, improved cellular glucose uptake, and modulation of liver lipid metabolism. However, the improvements are generally modest and do not replace comprehensive dietary interventions. Regarding appetite, consistent pre-meal vinegar intake may slightly influence hunger-related hormones such as ghrelin and peptide YY. The effect is usually subtle, not appetite suppression, but appetite regulation, helping individuals consume slightly fewer calories without feeling deprived. In 1-2-week trials, weight loss associated with vinegar consumption is typically moderate, a few kilograms at most. While not dramatic, this can be meaningful when combined with balanced nutrition. Interestingly, some participants did not significantly reduce calorie intake, yet still experienced mild weight reduction, suggesting possible improvements in metabolic efficiency or visceral fat reduction. Larger studies are still needed to confirm these mechanisms. As for gut health, long-term effects may stem more from the chemical environment vinegar creates rather than the bacteria it contains. Acetate, a short-chain fatty acid, plays a role in gut barrier integrity and immune regulation. With consistent intake, especially alongside a fiber-rich diet, it may contribute to a healthier gut environment. However, apple cider vinegar cannot replace a diverse diet rich in fermented foods and natural fibers. The most important aspect of long-term benefits is accumulation. Small daily improvements in insulin sensitivity, appetite control, and gut environment can shift metabolic trajectory over time, but these benefits depend heavily on context diet quality, physical activity, sleep, and stress levels. Not everyone will experience noticeable changes. Individuals with already healthy metabolism may see minimal effects, while those with mild metabolic dysfunction may benefit more. Ultimately, apple cider vinegar should be viewed as a supportive tool, not the foundation. The foundation remains whole foods, adequate protein, fiber intake, regular movement, and quality sleep. If those pillars are in place, vinegar may serve as a fine adjustment. In summary, when used consistently and appropriately, apple cider vinegar may modestly improve insulin sensitivity, regulate appetite, support mild weight loss over 12 weeks, and contribute to a healthier gut environment. Not magic, but cumulative biological tuning over time. Before you turn apple cider vinegar into a morning ritual, one point must be crystal clear. This is acid, and acids are not harmless, especially for your tooth enamel, esophagus, and stomach lining. Rule number 1, never drink apple cider vinegar undiluted. Taking it straight can irritate the throat, burn the esophagus, and over time contribute to enamel erosion. A safer approach is to dilute 1-2 tablespoons, 15-30 milliliters, in a full glass of water, roughly 250-350 milliliters. If you're new to it, start smaller, even 1 teaspoon, and only increase if your body tolerates it. To reduce enamel exposure, consider drinking through a straw, which limits contact with teeth. Afterward, rinse your mouth with plain water. One subtle but important tip: don't brush your teeth immediately after consuming acidic drinks. Enamel can be temporarily softened, and brushing right away may worsen wear. Wait about 20-30 minutes before brushing. Most importantly, not everyone should use it. If you have GERD acid reflux, stomach ulcers, gastritis, or gastroparesis delayed stomach emptying, vinegar may worsen symptoms. If you take medications, especially those affecting blood sugar or potassium, it's also smart to consult a clinician. The Health Systems Explained message is simple. Apple cider vinegar is a small tool, used correctly. It may support your routine. Used incorrectly, it can backfire. Your body doesn't need toughness. It needs precision. So, what really happens when you drink apple cider vinegar on an empty stomach? Not a miracle detox, not instant fat burning, and definitely not a replacement for lifestyle fundamentals. But biologically, it sends a real, though subtle, signal. Apple cider vinegar may support blood sugar regulation, modestly improve insulin sensitivity, influence hunger hormones, interact with the gut environment, and, in the right context, support fat metabolism. However, these benefits depend entirely on your overall metabolic environment, diet quality, sleep, movement, stress levels, and individual biology. Vinegar will not fix a dysregulated metabolism if you're sleeping 4 hours a night and living on ultra-processed foods. But if your foundations are solid, it can serve as a metabolic fine-tuning tool. In metabolic science, we don't chase miracles. We look for small levers, repeated daily, that create cumulative change. If this video gave you a clearer understanding of how your body responds to simple habits, subscribe to Health Systems Explained. Here, we don't exaggerate. We decode biology with balance and precision. See you in the next breakdown, where we continue learning how to work with your body, not against it.